This is Ryan from PerformaBuilt, and coming up, we're going to do a little couple episodes on mostly diagnosis and failure points on GM's line of transmissions. Really, no matter what you buy, 4L60, 4L80, 400, even 6L80, this all kind of correlates to it. What I want to touch on today for diagnosis is I just installed my transmission and it won't move, or I was driving it down the road pretty freshly installed and it has stopped working. No forward, no reverse, no nothing. What that usually is, 99% of the time, folks, with a 4L60, 4L80, 400, turbo 400, sorry, I said that twice, but that's okay. 204R, 6LA, you name it, okay? GM used basically the same two styles of pumps, a gear-driven one and a vane type one. Most everything at a vane type except the 400 and 4L80, they have a gear-driven. Even the newer stuff has a vane type. Why your trans won't move under either one of these circumstances is one of two things. But mainly, the main thing is it's installer error, no matter which way you look at it. Things weren't checked or things weren't done right. One of these three things is you might not have had the converter all the way in. Now there's a golden rule, it's in our instructions. There's 3 clicks which you can follow, but I ask you to double check that with a tape measure. On an LS from converter pad to bell end, it's 1.25 inches. On an LT 298mm earlier style 4L60E, it is actually like 1 inch and 1/8. It's not very much, but it is shrunk a little bit. So just check that. You'll usually see a little fluid spurt out your cooler lines as well if you've shoved it in right. Now, when you do this, and if you don't have that pushed in, you're going to push the transmission up to the block and you're probably going to hear a crack. You broke the pump. At that point, just stop, let's just start over, let's fix it, and no damage to the transmission. That's the easiest one. Now, probably the most frustrating one I deal with on more often than not are these two things, which I'm going to talk about here. One is spacing, and the other is flex plate negligence. So we'll talk about spacing first. Spacing is spacing your converter when it's all the way into the transmission. The gap between the converter pad and the flex plate pad should be about 1/8 of an inch. 1/8 is like the money. 3/16 is the max. And you can do this very easily. There's an inspection cover down here on a bell housing. And the way I like to do this is a 6L80, but the 4L60 has the same damn thing. There's a little inspection cover here, okay? This one, not so much. This is where you're gonna find your spacing. And you can see, you guys will tell me micrometer numbers and stuff. Stop doing that. I can't imagine you fitting a micrometer up in here. Instead, just use a 1/8 or 3/16 Allen key. They're flat on both sides. Slide it up in there and use washers or, spacers, things like that accordingly to get your 1/8 inch minimum to 3/16 maximum space. And then you can bolt the converter to the flex plate, made it, you're good to go, nothing to worry about. The other thing is, and you could see there previously that the 6L80 is really the same damn thing as the 4L60. It's a vane style pump. Your converter plugs into these 2 slots. That's all that holds it. There's no load. A billet rotor is not going to save you from tearing up your pump. It's just a manner of proper installation. That's really it. Now the other thing is flex plate negligence. So the spacing and flex plate really tie in together. Flex plate negligence is, everybody thinks it's just a plate. It's not. It's made of spring steel. What's going to happen is on acceleration, that flex plate is going to push towards the transmission, depending on how hard you're excelling, sometimes really hard. On decel, it's going to spring back towards the engine. That's moving that converter neck in and out on those rotor teeth. It doesn't have a lot of room. They're about 1/4 inch. Your flex plate is going to get old and weak, or you're going to overpower it, one of the two. If you have 500 horsepower and over, get a nice SFI. If you want to nip it in the butt, spend $300, get a billet converter from Circle D. Otherwise, an OEM flex plate will work with most heads cam vehicles, 450 horsepower or less. Always make sure it's new. It is technically a part of the tranny. It needs to be functional to operate. If you're using your old 200,000 mile flex plate or one that's 10 years old, you're already fucking up. You're making a big mistake. And what's going to happen is it's going to overspring, come out of the pump, or start beating it into the aluminum casing and smash it. And then you're going to say, oh, piece of shit, 4L60E. It's not true. You're the problem. This is why I can tell as well. Every builder will know if you have messed up in this area. This is a tooth that the converter neck plugs onto. Now what's happened is you can see this gouge, and that's where the converter came right out of it, tried to go back in on acceleration, and smashed the hell out of it. It's just a big gash. Every single time we can see this. Now this is a case of a weak flex plate. He had his spacing right. This line right here is about 3/16. That's also how we can tell. So the pump rotor never sees load. Billet rotors are really fucking useless unless you're turning like 10,000 RPM, which is a little bit of an exaggeration, but you know, nobody's doing that hardly, so let's not even worry about that. But a billet rotor is not going to save you from this circumstance, because if you put a billet rotor in, you haven't addressed these other issues, what's going to happen is it's going to come out and that billet's not going to break. It is going to fuck all kinds of shit up. It's going to tear it up very badly. So, flex plate negligence, proper spacing, don't use micrometers, use an Allen key or drill bit, make life much easier on you, and it's always in our instructions. And for those 80 fanboys, this is a 4L80 gear-driven pump, and let me tell you what, it's worse than the vane pump. These have no room for error. It's steel on cast, and this one, bad flex plate again, beating itself, burning it to death, scoring it up, just chewing metal up everywhere. On an 80, everybody likes to see an 1/8 of an inch. So this is Ryan telling you, please read your instructions. If you stop moving 99% of the time, you're going to want to readdress these two areas and get your transmission repaired, unfortunately. Thank you for watching. See you next Tech Tip Tuesday.